Ready? Play.
Yeah, not even 30 seconds. Anyway, yes. Hello, guys. We are with this sort of like, we're doing this impromptu show with Vansh, who apparently has become a vampire over the course of the Asian swing. And that's because Rafa Nadal has announced retirement. If you thought that he had already announced it, well, I mean, I can't blame you because I think everyone was talking about it and thinking, okay, is it Laver Cup? Is it Davis Cup? Is he going to go until the spring? Is he going to go until Roland Garros? But today we finally have like a, decision, and that is that the Davis Cup Finals will be his last event. I mean, I don't honestly have no idea how much he's actually going to play there. I think he's still in for the Six Kings Slam as well. So if you want to get your Nadal watching, you have to be like very, make sure that you watch these events because, well, there's not going to be that many opportunities. Hello, Vansh, on this beautiful night for you. Yeah, what's your kind of like immediate feeling after this morning bomb for me, for you a night bomb?
Yeah, I must say, I was much more prepared for this one than, let's say, the Federer announcement. I just had been thinking about it actually for many days. Like, is he going to actually try to play the clay swing again in 2025, or is the Davis Cup, which seems like a very fitting event for Rafa in his career? He's won it 5 times, obviously with the whole Spanish team alongside him and Alcaraz doubles and the possibility of him playing singles, like you said already, against Van de Zandskop already in the opening match. So I kind of was thinking like this would be very fitting for Nadal to go out here with his teammates in that kind of setting, just like Roger did with the Labour Cup. But I think Davis Cup has just special meaning for Rafa and such great memories as well. Already, winning it in Malaga in 2019, one of the best moments of his career for sure. I think he would tell you. So yeah, no, I mean I think it's just one last opportunity to really savor Nadal. And Yeah, I mean, his career went on much longer than I had thought, and he gave us so much into his 30s, and even already this year. I mean, he played 19 matches and won 12 of them. So, and he got to a final of a 250, and he gave it one last competitive push. And ultimately, when the news came out that he wasn't going to play the U.S. Open, and not even necessarily because he was injured or struggling with anything specifically, but just more so the landscape of where he was at in his game, and also and where the rest of the players were at, and just his overall general feeling of not being as competitive anymore, and maybe not having that same desire like he once did. So I think ultimately I'm not too surprised, and I think I'm actually really excited about it. Actually, it makes me very excited for the final week of the season, even more than normal.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, we don't really know how much he'll actually play at the Davis Cup finals because, it's a real question, like whether Rafa is going to be Spain number two.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. Like, he's not playing any events, since the Olympics up until then. He won't have any professional events probably. So, other than the Six Kings Slam. So, I don't think Nadal will be Spain's number two, to be honest. But then you run the risk of the fact that you have Alcaraz playing, like somebody, and then you don't get the doubles match even. I don't know how this is going to be, what they're going to do about this. I have no idea what the plan is going to be for Spain. Of course, as a number two, you play first, so you can't really also base this on how the first match went or something like that. And yeah, I mean, I think he might just play doubles. That's kind of my idea for this, to be honest. When it comes to yeah, what you said about kind of the ideal moment to go out, I think it's a good one. Yes, I think the Olympics were a nice moment. I think Roland Garros was, but this is also an idea. Personally, I think that if he went, if he decided not to retire here, then like he would have had to play at least most of the clay swing next year. And if he wasn't ready for it, then well, today, or rather, the Davis Cup Finals is a great date to do it. I think, as you said, it's going to be at home. It's an important event for him. He's won it a few times, and has a ridiculous Davis Cup record. So I think that's a fantastic moment to go out. Laver Cup, I would have hated the idea actually. I think it worked perfectly fine for Federer. In fact, probably the best it could have been for Federer, really, other than maybe winning a big title and retiring or something like that. But for Rafa, it just didn't never really made any sense because it's not the same event. And then what are we like? It's not the same event from his perspective as it is for Roger. And are we suddenly gonna just have everybody retiring at Labour Cup? So I'm glad that that didn't happen, to be honest. And I think that Davis Cup is going to be a very good opportunity. It's just a question because of the unique format. Like, how much is he actually going to be able to play? Is he even going to play one match? I'm pretty sure they would like to. Of course,
Yeah.
the tournament organizers will be like very, very sort of like pressured into even him playing that match. So let's imagine, I don't know, Spain loses the first two singles matches. I think they would still put on Rafa as like a doubles exhibition or whatever, just because you have to do it for the crowd, for him as well. Yeah, I mean, of course, Rafael Nadal has been kind of like, since basically both me and you, since we became tennis fans, Rafael Nadal was already in the picture. So maybe you can tell me about some of your first memories of Rafael Nadal and yeah, what they were and how they kind of shaped you as a tennis fan.
Yeah, I mean, so I think my first right off the bat memory just so happened to be one of the most memorable matches of all time with the 2008 Wimbledon final. I mean, that is like the first match I properly sat down and watched live with my dad, who was into tennis before I was. So that was like an introduction to the sport, you know. So with Rafa and his capri pants and sleeveless shirt taking on Roger, and obviously the whole advertised rivalry and the epic finish at the end, like that was kind of the moment. And for a while, you know, I didn't actually completely appreciate his game because I was more of a Roger fan, especially for the first few years. And it was actually through the matches with Roger and through through like sort of getting to know him, from that I became more of an entrenched sort of deeper. It was so difficult not for him not to be such a big part of our lives, right, in the early 2010s. And just the more and more we started to get into the game on a weekly basis. And yeah, I mean some of the things that he like stood for in tennis, and the way he sort of represented the game, the way he sort of went about it point for point, that's something I always really admired. Like the way he would always just kind of treat every point like it was his very last. That competitive drive spirit, obviously the, you know, the mentality to come back from so many different injuries as well, and to improve as a tennis player on the other surfaces, and to continuously keep adding things to his game. You know, particularly in that period of sort of 2014 to 2017, it was tough to watch him, kind of struggle against his biggest rivals. And then ultimately, 2017 we saw a new revamped version of Rafa under Carlos Moya. And so that whole journey was another chapter. And there were like almost 4 or 5 different chapters to Rafa because of his insane longevity, right? You can already start from, even pre Roger rivalry days, pre Miami 2004. Like then you have the whole rivalry with Roger. Then you have Novak coming in, and then you have, all the other sort of epic matches that he's played in Davis Cup and Olympics. And Roland Garros obviously is just his own. You could write a whole book on it. So yeah, I mean, it's just so many different moments. And then also the part where he came back in 2022. I think if you were going to cite just 2 memorable matches for Rafa that I'll always just remember, it is going to be 2008 Wimbledon and 2022 Australian Open final. Um, you know, I think those are the two kind of sandwich in that 14-year period. Those are the two that to me personally would stand out if I were to pick like 2 matches that kind of sum him up in the best way. Those would be mine. I'm not sure what yours would be, but yeah, those are kind of my big picture memories.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think I've said it on the channel already a few times that one of the first matches I watched like from the first point to the last was the Australian Open 2012 final, which is crazy because it was almost 6 hours, but that's how
Yeah.
good it was. That's how captivating it was, and it certainly was one of the sort of main experiences that got me into following tennis on a first weekly then daily basis. When it comes to sort of the first few years with Nadal, we probably had a bit of a complicated relationship because I started out as a Federer fanboy, so
Me too. Yeah.
I probably liked watching Rafa lose just because, well, that meant that Federer's rival is out, and that meant that the rankings, the titles, or whatever the records will not be going his way. Of course, as I sort of started getting into the sport even more, that stopped bothering me whatsoever. In fact, also the last few matches that Federer played against Nadal, like that's some of my best memories too. Australian Open final 2017, of course. That's like the one year when Federer started dominating Nadal. And anyway, that's not really what we're talking about here, obviously. So with Rafa, yeah, as you said, a lot of chapters, a lot of sort of like improvement over the course of his career, which is true for all big three, really, that they were around so long, and also they were pushing each other in order to keep up with one another. They had to like kind of just make sure that they are constantly evolving their games, and that's something that Rafa did beautifully as well over the course of his career. There were patches like especially 2015, 16 when he just looked finished. It looked like there's no turning back. And yet suddenly 2017, 18, 19, all of these years, he's basically among the top 2 players in the world, top 3 maybe at worst. And obviously later on, he also keeps winning Roland Garros just like it's nothing, like he was his entire career. I know that some people still try to claim that he's like a one-service specialist, but I mean, he has 8 Grand Slams at the other 3 events, won every single Grand Slam twice. Obviously, it's an amazing body of work. I mean, where does he leave in terms of his legacy? I think both of us are pretty much under the impression that like Djokovic is clearly the statistical GOAT. He's the one that, or the GOAT just in general. He's got the best numbers, and now Rafa or Roger will not be able to catch him. That's for sure. But yeah, where do you think Nadal leaves in terms of his legacy? And just for the sake of future fans, and kind of when they will be introduced to tennis, what will be sort of the first thing that they hear about Rafa Nadal?
Yeah, I mean, he's undoubtedly the greatest clay court player that has ever picked up a racket. Like, there's just no denying that. I mean, statistically and also eye test wise, I mean, just that is what you always remember. But also the massive improvement that he made on, to get better on the faster courts, and how much, like you said, he won every major twice. But I think it was just the way that he played, just the way that he went about every single point, in the same manner. I mean, I think that's what actually maybe even separates him from his other 2 big rivals. Was just, just like having that level of focus and intensity every single point is just not something that we're used to seeing even from the other 2 legends on the screen here. So maybe that would be like sort of my one big like sort of just takeaway, that just how he competed. I never saw him kind of give in even for a single set, even the ones where he was blown off the court. I mean, there was always just that belief that he could always come back. He could always just come back from the brink, no matter what the situation, or no matter how. I mean, he would be out sometimes for 6, 7, 8 months, and he might need a few tournaments, but by the time he got to the 3rd or 4th one, and by the time he got to the clay swing, he was sweeping them like it was like it was a piece of cake. And he didn't, it didn't feel that, sometimes we would go into Roland Garros and it would be so inevitable that he would end up winning the title. And I don't think you can say that for any player in any other tournament. So those are probably the things that I just would stand out. And then also just his play style. The deep return position, the lefty, the leftiness, the way that he sort of played with the angles that he was able to find, the way he sort of hit I think he had the best passing shots that I've ever seen from just way behind the baseline. The kind of shots he could come up with just on the run, the banana shot, the fist pump, I think is very synonymous, obviously, with Rafa. So just sort of that style of play is not something that I could see replicated in the near future.
Yeah, definitely. Like movement-wise, physicality, he kind of reinvented tennis, and he invented his own tennis many, many times with the improvements to his serve and backhand, especially over the years. I'm kind of struggling to come up with an answer, Matthew, to your question, like why exactly today, Shanghai quarterfinals? I don't know. Maybe he made the decision relatively, like a day or 2 ago. I don't know. But yeah, probably there's just never really a good moment to do it, I guess, in the tennis world. So I mean, you can choose any day, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, we knew that some sort of announcement had to be coming from Rafa, whether it was going to be just I'm retiring, or maybe some sort of schedule for his next appearances. And as it turns out, it's obviously going to be a retirement. I think in terms of like his legacy, it's not like, even though Djokovic is the GOAT and has the best numbers, people who are going to be getting into tennis in like 5 years, they're not going to be just learning about, oh, there was this guy, Novak Djokovic. They're going to be learning there were these 3 guys and they dominated the sport. So I think in that sense, he's definitely right with them, and obviously will be remembered as one of the icons of the sport. Definitely a lot of signature shots, as Matthew says. What else can we say? Definitely someone who was, yeah, just like for me was pretty much in tennis pretty much the entire time I've been watching. It's different. I agree. You said this earlier than the Federer announcement, because for some reason Federer always felt like, okay, so he's gonna be back, we just don't know when.
Yeah.
And with Rafa, I think because the last few years looked, especially the last 2 seasons, looked like they did, it was more expected. So it's not like we woke up today, or in your case, we stayed up today and we were like, oh, Rafa is retiring? What the hell? That's impossible. It's rather definitely an expected decision. However, of course, we didn't know precisely when it would happen. Yeah, I'm kind of, I don't remember what I was supposed to ask you about next, but yeah. Anyway, what else do we have to say about Rafa?
Yeah, I mean, I think also it's amazing that he actually, I was thinking about this the other day. Like, no matter how calm or how, sort of composed you are on the court, there's usually one time where you're going to have a severe outburst and break a racket, and that just never happened for Rafa in a professional tennis match his whole career. Like, can't think of a single time that he actually broke one. So that is something unique, I think, to Rafa. That, yeah, well, I mean, just a good example for young people getting into the game.
Yeah, definitely it kind of set the standard, especially for Spanish players right now. It's like when Alcaraz broke a racket recently, people in Spain were just like shocked, they were stunned that someone does that. And obviously that's, I mean, 99% of players have broken a racket on court, but
Yeah.
but Rafa didn't, at least, to the best of our knowledge. And yeah, that's definitely something that stood out as well, kind of always showing that respect, either to the opponents or even, yeah, to that part of the sport and to the equipment. Matthew would have loved Rafa to have a rival on clay. Djokovic semi-final, Roland Garros 2013 was great, but a one-off, I thought that Team might push him the most. I mean, Team was kind of pushing him the most in like 2017-19. But yeah, that was still like the most out of other players, rather than actually, beating him regularly. Although I think he beat him at least once on clay every single, in all, at least once on clay every year in that short stretch.
Yeah.
But yeah, generally speaking, of course, his record at Roland Garros is also something that will just like go down in history. He got that fourth loss against Alexander Zverev this year, but yeah, I don't think it changes it all that much. It would still be like 100, 12 to 4 or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. 112 and 4 is.
Yeah, it's obviously it's something that no one else ever really produced, maybe besides Borja at Roland Garros, but we're talking about a much shorter sample. 51 matches, I think, for the Swedes. So that's not really comparable. And then, yeah, over the course of so many years too. And yeah, maybe let's talk about this. Are there any, like, if you have a career like Rafa's, are there even any regrets? Is there even going to be something that he's going to be like, I wish I did that. I wish I won that tournament. I wish I got that record.
Yeah, I mean, there's always some. I mean, I think just like Djokovic would have loved to win that semifinal in 2013 at Roland Garros when he had the overhead upper break in the fifth. I think you would probably say the same about the 2012 Australian Open with the backhand at 4-2, 30-15, right? That's probably one moment where it's like, if he wins that point, maybe if he holds for 5-2, maybe he ends up winning that and Djokovic ends up winning the French that other time. Maybe that could be one. Also, the 2018 Wimbledon semifinal. I think then he would have had 3 Wimbledons, and then he would have had, I think, yeah, it's a bit brutal because he made so many Wimbledon finals. I think, yeah, he made 5 Wimbledon finals. He won 2 titles. There was that stretch up until 2011, but then that would have been his first Wimbledon final and ultimately title, because I just don't think Kevin Anderson would have beaten the winner of that.
No, he was too tired
So,
anyway. Yeah.
so I think that's maybe one that he would have a slight regret. But then again, I don't think there was much he could have done. Yeah, those 2 break chances. I think it's 7-all. Djokovic comes up with a ridiculous forehand pass cross court. Nadal comes in, maybe slight hesitation on the approach. Of course, Djokovic would then go on to hit the same kind of forehand approach shot in the next year in the finals against Roger. But nonetheless, I think those would be the 2 big matches where he had a slight chance. Definitely 2012, I think, was a bigger chance in that fifth set because he was actually up a break and serving. But 4-2. But I think those would be like the main two. I can't really think of any others.
Yeah, I think that for him, I think his regrets kind of honestly pale in comparison to, for example, what we were talking about when Federer retired. Like, you have that 2019 Wimbledon, and it would have been the last slam and everything, beating Djokovic. Whereas for Rafa, I mean, yeah, these matches okay, but they happened in like the middle of his career. They didn't really, it wasn't the last possible chance or something like that. And I think in the long run, it probably doesn't matter all that much whether he won 2018 Wimbledon. Like, okay, having more slams than Novak, that would have been big. And if he wins
Yeah.
that semifinal, then they are tied with each other theoretically, if we assume that there's no like butterfly effect and everything like that. So everything just goes the same from then on. But yeah, I mean that's only under that assumption. But yeah, for me, I don't know. I just don't feel like Rafa has all that much to really look back at thinking. Nah, I mean, I think really he's kind of done it all, and because these are kind of stuck in the middle of his prime, of his playing career, I don't think that they're going to be like something massive, that he's going to be sitting and that 2012 Australian Open final. It's probably at this stage more important to kind of be a part of these major tennis histories. Unless of course, Novak had like 30 slams, then maybe. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think when it's that close, it probably doesn't matter all that much. But yeah, I would agree with Matthew. That seems to be the guy out of the big four who kind of has the least regrets, maybe. Although, then again, what would Novak regret at this stage? Anyway, would he care about not winning World Tour finals? That's also something that Matthew posted here. Would Rafa care about that? And
Maybe
as Sergio
2020.
says,
Maybe 2020
yeah, but
ATP
like, is that
finals
is that
is
is
one
that
moment.
important? Is that an important part to his legacy that he doesn't have that title?
Not really. No. I mean, I'm sure he would have loved to win it once, but there were also other circumstances there. Like he wasn't always fully healthy that part of the year, and that surface just didn't really suit him that well as well. The faster like indoor courts, but I don't think it really affects his legacy that much. Would have been nice to win it once. He did get to the finals twice though, 2010 and 2013, and those Djokovic and Federer were better on that surface. So, but I think maybe there's that one match in the semifinals that he would have played Team in the final, whom Team was kind of having his number on hardcourt that year anyway. But that's potentially another you never know in the final if that turns around. But no, I don't think overall I wouldn't put that in the as a huge regret really.
Yes, this is official, Michael. You're gonna find it all over his social media and everything. Yeah, I also don't think it's big. Like, sure, he would have liked to win it, but ultimately, like in the long run, yeah, it just doesn't really
Yeah.
matter. I think it's just gonna be a fun. It's gonna be a very fun kind of like stat that people are gonna find out. When in 10 years everyone is hearing about these guys, Djokovic, Nadal, Federer, and then they realize, oh, but Nadal has never won in the ATP finals. That's interesting. But that's really all there is to it. I think it's just going to be a decent tidbit, for someone who doesn't know it. But otherwise, it's not a big deal. He also cried when Federer retired at Laver Cup. Maybe he regrets that, Matthew. No, I don't think he regrets losing the Laver Cup, because I think he's also won the Laver Cup. And and Sergio is also asking about this. Will this motivate España to win the Davis Cup in Malaga? I think from my perspective, like, things don't really change for Spain here. Like, it's still a team that is so based on Carlos Alcaraz.
Yeah.
And as we said earlier, it's actually going to be something like this. Like, what sort of capacity is Nadal going to be there in? Because, he has to prove to the captain, I guess, to David Ferrer, that he is going to be a better singles option than Bautista Agut, Carreño Busta. I have no idea right now, because we just aren't going to have Rafa playing any tournaments up until then, and we don't know what sort of physical state he is in, really, other than the fact that he doesn't think he would be able to play without limitations, as we saw on the screen just a second ago. So I think, to me, Spain is just still very, very reliant on whether Carlos is going to produce, and that's kind of both a fantastic thing for them, but also a bit of a drawback, because one loss from him and they're probably doomed, right? So the first opponent for Spain, of course, in that week, in the Davis Cup finals in Malaga, will be the Netherlands, which I mean, it seems like a pretty easy team for them to beat. But of course, again, one poor match from Carlos and suddenly things become extremely tricky. Will he play Davis Cup or not, Sasha? Yes, he will, but we don't know if he's going to play doubles, singles.
Yeah. I think David Pereira said earlier, like a week ago, to Rafa that just if you're up for it, just be prepared. It's going to be Boating Van is on scope for you, as a potential singles opponent. So he knows like that option is available now. It just totally depends on how he's feeling physically, right? I mean, if he's feeling like physically he can, even he won't have any professional matches coming in besides the uh, exhibition in Saudi Arabia, which will be like maybe a couple of matches, but obviously not nearly the same thing. And yeah, I mean, it's basically all on Carlos and maybe Marcel Granollers if he's actually playing the doubles because he's very good in that. It's that doubles option as well. So yeah, if not, then I guess we'll see Rafa on the bench and we'll see him, like you said, maybe some kind of an exhibition thing. Like he'll definitely play a few points, in some capacity. I would think, even if it's not the singles and doubles rubbers.
Yeah, Sean already there with the Shanghai questions. We're probably gonna leave that for some other time. John apparently not going to DC, so he's not gonna shed a tear when Rafa will be there interviewed. And also, this question from Enserio as well. Could Rafa have gone undefeated at Roland Garros if not for injuries? I mean, first of all, I have to say that injuries are a large part of the sort of a professional athlete's career. So it's tough to say what happened due to an injury and what didn't. I think that obviously the Zverev loss this year, he was kind of wrecked physically. Then again, it was his best match of the season, I think, despite reaching the final and Bostad later. The Djokovic one in 2021 or two, or I always lose it. 21. That was of course when he was also struggling with a lot of pain. But earlier, the one against Soderling in 2009, was that an injury? Not really, right? And then also 2015 against Djokovic, that was really, as I said earlier, like 2015, 16. Those were the years when he seemed like he would be he was pretty much like done.
I think
almost.
of those ones that you mentioned, 15 is the one where he was like physically the most healthy, but it was just like a mental confidence thing, right? Like his forehand was just falling short, and just that loss was like kind of predictable, really. Just going into that quarterfinal, you kind of knew.
That's how Rafa looked in 2015, 16. Like nothing really changed there. And also like latter stages of 2014. So that was maybe the time when he was just looking pretty close to done. But of course later on he like revived his career beautifully. But I don't think that loss was impacted by anything. And again, like we can say that he would have won 2009 French Open, but for knee issues. But he lost in the fourth round. So we are not really in a position to really, I think, give him that title. But he's definitely a player who always had something, pretty much. Was it due to the physical style? Was it due to just, I don't know, being unlucky, genetics? Maybe. But certainly over the course of his career, obviously, we pretty much always had Rafa playing with some degree of pain or some degree of an injury. It was a bit easier on clay, definitely, especially on the knees, as obviously and that natural surface is just much pleasant for it. Can Brandon Nakashima reach 0.1 of Rafa's career success? That's a very important question as well. What's a 0.1% of Rafa's career success, Vansh?
0.1%. I mean, he has one title, right? Rafa had 92, so I guess he's already surpassed it in some ways. Can we say that?
14 Grand Slams, they kind of mean a lot. That's for sure. If
you get to, I don't know, the second week of every major, that's already pretty substantial.
0.1.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe. I'm not sure. I think that if someone won 22 Grand Slams, then 0.1 of his success is like one Grand Slam, to be honest.
I know.
Like that's how much I value that. But of course, that's also, it's not too important right now.
Yeah. We should say he did have that congenital foot problem, right? The Muller-Weiss syndrome, which was diagnosed early on in his career, like 2004-ish. So that always meant that he, had custom-made orthotics. He was always kind of, having to battle that with his with his foot, and then eventually there was a lot of knee problems, right? Like kind of later on in his career, the wear and tear and stuff. And that's mostly, but then it wasn't just the knee. I mean, later on it was pretty much every single body part you can think of at some point.
Something we can probably mention also, other than winning Davis Cup 4 times and everything, he actually has a great record in all the other sort of like national competitions too, right? I mean, the only player to win the Olympics twice, also the Olympics in doubles. So perhaps in that sense, it's even more fitting to finish off in an event like this. And also, I know that the Olympics kind of have a controversial importance in the world of tennis. Some people don't think they are key at all. Some people believe that they're like one of the most important events, definitely. But I think it's also going to be a part of Rafa's legacy, especially for Spanish fans, that he was able to pick up these gold medals in Beijing, and then of course 2 of them in I mean, one of them in Rio de Janeiro. What did I say earlier? That he was the only player that won Olympics twice?
Yeah, I was gonna correct you and say, well, Murray.
Yeah, I don't know why I said that, honestly. I
Let's see.
obviously that's Murray notes Nadal, but I was just looking at his Olympic record, and I was like, wait, what am I saying now? Of course, he was fourth there, right, at the Rio de Janeiro Olympics. But yeah, picking up these 2 medals in Beijing and in Rio de Janeiro, that was obviously huge as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and John is pointing out this interview that he did with Uncle Tony about the 2009 French Open. I guess he didn't play another match that whole season after, or no, that's not true. I mean, he played later in the year, before the U.S. Open, but he did have to miss Wimbledon that year in 2009. So, and I think that was due to the knee. But of course, I mean, Soderling just played out of his mind that day. It was a cloudy day as well, and just kind of went into the 4th set tiebreak and got all the way to the final. So
yeah, and then also of course beat Federer next year and go to the final, losing to Nadal then. And there was something more that I wanted to mention. Yeah, this is of course, as you can see, a very emergency like podcast where I don't really know what to talk about anymore, but well, 81 win streak on clay. That was of course something special too. And really, once again, kind of shows you how unbeatable he was in these matches. I mean, up until this year, only 4 players defeated him in a 2-level final on clay.
Yeah, pretty ridiculous.
Now also Nuno Borges, but Horacio Zeballos, shout out to you. And it's actually, I know what I can say. It's actually kind of striking how often some players' legacies are actually because of what they did against Nadal. So like you have Robin Soderling, the first thing everybody thinks about is that win in 2009. Recently we had Pablo Cuevas retiring, and like one of the things that I mentioned in my tweet about that was that he beat Nadal on clay in 2016, because that was kind of the achievement that a lot of people would know him for. Horacio Zeballos, whom I just mentioned, honestly, Nuno Borges will also have basically for at least a while is going to be known for the fact that he beat Rafa in a clay final, even if it was 2024 already, which kind of again tells you what sort of meaning and legacy he has, especially in terms of that surface. Matthew says that we should also mention Richard Gasquet, one of the most elegant players, also announcing his departure. Unfortunately, Richard Gasquet will not have anything to say regarding his Rafa matches. He will probably want to forget about them. But yeah,
you probably want to remember the match he won as a teenager in the Le Petit A.
Yeah, Le Petit A, and I think there was also like a challenger retirement or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, if it wasn't a retirement, he probably would have been mentioning that. But well, I mean, that doesn't really count then, right? But yeah, he beat him at Le Petit A as well. And Gasquet, in case someone doesn't know, Gasquet announced that he will retire after the 2025 Roland Garros. So it's not going to be Rafa retiring there, as we probably would have thought maybe at some point, but it's going to be Gasquet actually. And Serio, this will not give me enough motivation to watch the Six Kings Slam. Definitely check out the article from DW. Shameless plug from our producer. Vansh, anything else?
Well, one more thing is also just how dominant he was on the other clay tournaments, as the Clay Masters leading up to Roland Garros, because he did win, I think, just those 4 tournaments, like Barcelona, Monte Carlo, Rome, and Roland Garros, he won all of them 10 plus times. So you add up those titles, that's already like 47 of his titles, which is like, a great player like Andy Murray just retired with 46 total titles, and he has 47 in just those 4 tournaments. So pretty incredible there, like how he managed to win 10 plus. And like, you're looking at like Monte Carlo, and it's like the second most is like 3, and his is like 10. So I thought that sustained success as well as across the whole clay swing. Like he kind of wasn't just like only always looking at peaking at Roland Garros. It was all like he treated every single of those other tournaments as its own individual Roland Garros as well, which I think is pretty unique.
Yeah, between 2005 and 2013, there was no clay court season when he would get less than 20 wins, and there was no clay court season when he would get more than 3 losses. 2 unbeaten runs as well in 2010 and 2006, when he went 24-0 and 22-0 on clay, which again is pretty ridiculous. I think just the other day on some stream, I don't remember where it was. Maybe it was the stream with you. I don't remember. But basically, we were talking about the Verdasco Nadal Monte Carlo clash, and kind of how the reaction of Nando, and he wins this incredible point there, and that's kind of how people were coming up against Rafa and Clay. Like if they won a point, if they won a game, they were already just like, yeah. I mean, what the hell do I have to do in order to keep going like this? I mean, the intensity that he would get out of you and the intensity he would force you to play at. That was definitely something special, and for many years of his career, just something that no one was really able to match. And yeah, as we said, he had a lot of other surface success as well to boot, especially in these like best seasons of his career, like 2010, 2013, 17 as well to an extent, maybe even
He also
22.
pulled off that amazing streak in 2013, winning the Canada Cincinnati US Open, which is like one of the hardest things to do. Like only him and like Pat Rafter is and Andy Roddick in 2003. Like those are the only 3 players to do that. So.
Yeah, 13 was a bit of an interesting year for him for sure, because like he didn't play the Australian Open, he was still injured, comes back, has that loss to Horacio Zeballos, which I mentioned already, and well, he loses in the first round at Wimbledon, but otherwise up until the US Open, he like has 3 losses for the year and about 60 wins. So if he kind of just kept it going for a bit while longer, maybe picked up that elusive ATP finals in November, then we could have had like literally one of the best seasons in tennis history as well. Whereas right now, I guess maybe 2010 was his best, if we're kind of looking at it just, sort of strictly achievements wise. Probably didn't have the sort of season that Federer had a couple of times or Djokovic a couple of times, but still, of course, he ended up picking three slams that year in 2010, the last 3 Grand Slams of the season, which I think makes it go down in history as his best, as the best year of his career. And that was also the other one where he made the finals of the year-end championships.
Yeah, and then there was also like the Australian Open. Even though he wasn't, even though he only won it twice, he made like a ton of quarterfinals. It was like he had at one point he had the most quarterfinals of anyone, and just like even the years that he would come in with some injury question mark, he would always at least get to the quarters. So that was, yeah. That was something. I think same with like Paris Bercy. Every time he played, he was always like getting to the quarters, and then
Yeah, these are kind of similar questions from Enserio and Matthew. Is he the best clay court specialist in the history of the game? And also, was there any player in history that would have pushed him to the limits on clay, specifically Roland Garros? And I mean, yeah, I was just going to say also, Miles, that 2022 should be added to that list probably. Yeah, when it comes to that clay thing, I mean, obviously he's got the best record. It's always been a discussion whether it's Djokovic, Borg, maybe for a while at least Federer at number 2 in terms of history on clay, all time on clay. But it was never really a thing, like whether Rafa is the best or not, because he's just clearly, get so much more than anyone else. When it comes to whether Borg would push him, I mean, we just have no idea, right? I mean, it's a completely different era of tennis. It's a completely different sport. And well, the way that Björn Borg played in the 70s and 80s, he would not beat Rafa. But if Björn Borg was born today, maybe Leo Borg maybe should have played Rafa, and in fact he did. So well, but yeah, we don't really Well, we can't really classify that as a proper Borg versus Nadal showdown.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, if there's anything that I missed. I mean, for the U.S. Open, for the longest time was the one that he didn't have, and then he completed the. He became the youngest to also do the career slam. Right, he did that at 24. In 2010, he managed to do that. So, well, now I don't know if that record will actually hold up, because if Carlos Alcaraz wins the Australian Open, in one of the next 2 or 3 years, then he'll have that for the youngest player achievements. But also all the other, like, youngest ever to, win 5 Masters 1000s, or youngest ever to win 4 majors before 21, or whatever the stat is. He usually has that still in the
Yeah,
book.
he usually has that youngest stat, whatever it is, and pretty much always is somewhere in the oldest stat as well, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that also tells you a lot about longevity. Yeah, I would like to see Gustavo Kuerten against Nadal, like prime versions of both. But yeah, I mean, I don't think, if they played 10 matches on clay, Guga would win more than 2 or something like that. No righty one-handed backhand player stands a chance against prime Rafa on clay. I mean, some had their shots. Wawrinka team, definitely they were pretty well equipped. Federer, not really. I mean, only beat him twice in a lot of meetings on clay courts. But yeah, certainly that springiness of the forehand topspin against the one-handers, that's also something we're going to keep hearing about and keep remembering as the years go by. Could Rafa had more success in doubles being a lefty? I think, he's had a lot of good success in doubles when he played it. Obviously, was never really the main focus, but clearly he could have had
I
a
would say
career
he
in
was the
doubles.
best doubles player of the three.
Well, it's not Djokovic. That's clear. I think the
Yeah.
other two are debatable.
I think it's pretty close between him and Federer, and Andy as well had a lot of success in doubles. But yeah, when I think about how he won, like, I don't know, 10 titles, and he won some big tournaments with it, and he won Olympic gold in doubles as well. Roger also did. But yeah, I mean, even already, like, this year, like when he was playing with Carlos, the first couple of matches, I mean, he was really the best player on the court at times, particularly his side of the net at least. And so I think, yeah,
No, he was. When Gonzalez and Molteni tried to play them like off the baseline really a lot, then Rafa's leftiness again and like the crazy topspin would just be so important in that match, both on the pass, on the ground strokes. But when Krajcek Ram kind of just threw themselves at Nadal and Alcaraz, it became a bit of a different match. Matthew also says that, no, sorry, not Matthew, but Sean said that they should retire the sleeveless top with Rafa. This is also definitely something synonymical with him. I mean, we already have another Spaniard very often going sleeveless, but yeah, this is also something that we'll remember in the bandana. Players very rarely retire on top. They always think, why retire when I can still squeeze out more titles, says Matthew. And that's true. That's probably about the comment earlier about Rafa retiring after the French Open title win of 22. I mean, if he knew how his next 2 seasons were going to go, maybe he would have done that. But obviously you don't know that. And when you're on a high, it's tough to say goodbye for sure. That's true. Yeah, another comment on Brandon. But I like that Brandon is appearing a lot in this video as well.
Yeah.
Have they played actually? I don't think so, right?
No, but that's one match that I wish we would have seen, because first round of the Australian Open 2023.
Yeah, almost.
Versus Mackenzie McDonald. Brandon loses in 5, and then Mackenzie McDonald kind of, retired Rafa, I guess you could say, at the Australian Open.
Yeah, I mean, he did retire the denim shorts, but then again, he also started them. I think with Rafa, at least some other players are trying to go sleeveless. No one tried to follow the denim shorts.
I miss the Capri pants. I think those look really good. The Capri pants and the long hair.
Yeah, when that was in like the 2000s or something like that, right? He used to wear them.
Like 2005 and 6 particularly. He had always had like the bandana plus the long hair plus the Capri pants plus the sleeveless shirt. It was like the whole package.
With regrets, I mean, obviously he's also never won Miami, but again, that's not something that I think he's going to be like losing sleep.
5 finals is Yeah, that's definitely one. But I guess Roger also has the Rome and Monte Carlo, and for Rafa, it's Paris Masters and Miami, I guess, and the ATP finals.
It will be the Olympics match against Novak, Miles, unless you count the Six Kings Slam. He never won Estoril. I don't think so, but he won Sopot. His first ATP Tour title was actually in Poland. And
actually, I mean, if that is his last match, though, I mean, that is fitting. That at least it's against his biggest rival, right? Like, it's not.
Yeah, but it's not a good match against his
It's not a
biggest
memorable
rival.
one, and
That's
it's
a
not.
problem, If it was a battle, yes, but
Yeah. In some ways, maybe that match has made this decision easier and clearer in his mind, right? Like when he sort of knew, like, okay, I almost lost 1-0 to Novak on clay and Chatrier. Like, it's
maybe he
probably
will be
time to
desperate to just kick out Bautista Agut or Carreño Busta from that number 2 spot now. He just want a different match to end their career on. Also, Miami, I guess I mentioned that if we had Hawkeye in 2005, he would have won the title. So
yes, very true.
that was a horrible call there that saved Federer on a break point at like 1-4 in the third and allowed them to come back. Of course, that being a best of 5 match at the time. That match against Djokovic was significant in his decision. Yeah, could be. I mean, it seemed like in Bostadt, even if maybe the level wasn't necessarily improving all that much, sort of looking back at Roland Garros, I think he was better in Paris, even though he lost in the opening round. But he still had 3 hours on the court against Navone, a long match against, even 4 hours against Navone, I think, a long match against Ajdukovic as well. And he was going on, right? So it seemed like, at least physically, he is getting better. But yeah, it's possible that that Djokovic loss, the extent of it, could have been a big factor. And yes, Miles, Spain is going up against the Netherlands. Should win theoretically, but yeah, we just have to notice that the Spanish team is like very much built on Alcaraz and how he performs.
Yeah.
But it's possible he will play Botic van de Zandschulp. Yes, absolutely.
Yes. One more thing about Rafa is the one-liners that he gave in press. Some of those gems, right? Like we always remember, happening. Yeah. Here we are in Rome. There's always that one, there's those altercations with Ubaldo, some of those very famous on YouTube as well. And then there was that question after 2004 Miami when he loses the final to Djokovic, are you glad that Novak exists? And then he just goes, no.
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning of his career, obviously, he didn't really speak much English at all. Later on, he learned, and right now is very fluent. But still, some of these, like, Spanish way, like, I don't know, like the accent and generally the way he says things, definitely it stayed. And it makes for a very sort of like unique way of speaking in English, which is easy to like, imitate. And we've seen a lot of good parodies of the way that Rafa speaks. The no at the end of every sentence, the unbelievable, and everything. So definitely, I think his interviews were also fun because of that, but also because he's just a smart guy who ended up giving us a lot of good bits over the years. Shouldn't play Griekspoor. I mean, unless Alcaraz is out, he wouldn't play Griekspoor because he would have to play the number 2 of the Netherlands. There's also a question from Matthew. What do we think about sort of what Rafa will be doing in the years ahead? Of course, there's a family he has to kind of spend time with. He's got the Rafa Nadal Academy, right? So
yeah, that's another big part of his
there.
legacy, actually, the academy, right? Because it holds challenger events. They have courts on all 3 surfaces. Like, it's a proper school where you don't just play tennis. So that's definitely going to be a big one for him. It's only growing. It's been around for almost 8 years now. So I guess it was launched in 2016 October. And Federer was actually there for the opening of it.
Yeah, they had that celebration at the beginning. People seem convinced Mari will end up coaching inside the next 12 months. Not sure Rafa will, says Matthew. Yeah, I mean, I would be surprised if Rafa ends up going that route, at least at first. Definitely, it seems like after the whole career, he'll probably be desperate to spend some time home with his wife and his kid.
I could see him maybe being a future Davis Cup captain. What do you think? Like in a few years, maybe.
Yeah, I think
Get
Davis
it
Cup
done.
is a good idea because it's not exactly like that sort of a coaching job which requires you to be there 300 days of the year, right? It's just
Yeah,
a few weeks, really. So I think Davis Cup would be a nice compromise for sure.
yeah. I don't think he'd want to coach full time and be on tour and do all of that. But I think he'll mentor players from time to time in
Maybe
juniors.
with time, right? Like we don't
Yeah,
know what he want to do in 10 years, but yeah, I would be surprised if he does it instantly.
yeah.
Keen is
He's
annoyed
probably going
that
to play a lot
Dujai
of golf
Djokovic didn't beat
tournaments and
Nadal.
win some.
Huh?
Win a lot of golf tournaments and
All right,
focus
yeah, of course. A great
on
golfer. He
actually a
can
very good
now
golfer.
call Casper Ruud anytime there's a grass season around. He can call
Yeah,
Casper Ruud, and they'll basically be playing. From the end of Roland Garros to Wimbledon, they can literally spend 3 weeks on a golf course, and that
exactly.
will be Casper's preparation for Wimbledon.
Yeah. And then you have Andy
Uh,
Murray, who's like aspiring to get to that level, posting his golf swing every time on the socials.
the importance of the Davis Cup is only going to decrease rather than increase in the upcoming years. I don't know. Last year was a great success for the event, so I think we don't really know that. Also, they changed the format a little bit now.
Yeah,
I
there'll
think
be
that
more
at
home
least
and
the,
away
at least the
next year.
final eight is doing really well.
Hmm. But that's also because we had Sinner and Djokovic last year. This year we have
Yeah,
Alcaraz and Sinner, so I think that makes a big difference.
it does.
To
If it
start off.
was like known story, then yeah, it would have been very different for sure. Well, Duja Dukovic will never get another chance to play Rafael Nadal. Sorry, Keen. He will not be able to make up for that loss in Bostad. Mariano Navone will not get another chance. In fact, barely anyone will get another chance to play.
Is there any other players that you would have loved to see play Rafa right now that are just not going to get that chance before he retires?
It's a good question.
Probably the other.
I think most of the top have played him.
Yeah.
So maybe probably like later on, like I don't know, in 5 years, we can say that okay,
Yeah, I think
maybe
Runa is what I
Joao
was thinking as
Fonseca
well. Yeah.
or Rune,
Runa is,
yeah. Yeah, but I
Runa
mean,
is
if Rune
amazing.
is playing like yesterday, for example, I don't ever want to see him again on the court. But no, I mean, of course, if Rune like was in one of his stronger patches, then sure. But I don't
Runa,
think it's
Mahac, the short shorts, right? The short shorts crew.
yeah, it's nothing like very palpable. Like okay, this is a match. Yeah, I feel like we had to get that match. We got
Yeah.
Nadal Alcaraz, we got Nadal Sinner. He probably
Mhm.
played the most of these top guys really that we
Yeah.
have right now. So
Yeah, we had two very memorable Nadal Alcaraz matches in 2022 that I remember.
yeah,
So
Nadal Sinner rivalry not necessarily too memorable, but that's
yeah,
fine. At least they still clashed against each other.
yeah, yeah. Mostly the younger players like Feast, Shelton, Runa.
Yeah, I don't know if I feel about any of these that I would have loved to see it or something like that. Are you confident, Keen, that Nadal has never played Kenny the Skipper? I don't know actually.
Yeah.
Maybe he did.
I guess there are two wins this clay season for me that maybe have aged really well for Rafa. You could say the win over Kabuli and Barcelona. That certainly aged well with how
No,
much
I mean
better
it
Kabuli
did,
has gotten.
but if you watched it, it
No,
didn't, right? Like
no, it didn't. No,
Flavio
like
was just
but
overcome with both
yeah,
the top spin and
but
the aura.
but I guess you could say afterwards the success that he had, sure. And
Yeah,
given
but
all,
like
if
if
he
you watched
stayed
it,
healthy,
no, if you watched it, it was not a win where he like impressed or anything. No, I think literally the best match that he had
the round one
was
loss to
uh
Zverev.
was Roland Garros to Zverev.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then maybe I would also put the Diminor one in Madrid up there. Just probably that's his best win, probably by yeah, it is by a ranking, right? Probably his best win.
I mean, is Navone in Bostad aging well? Sure, it was a 4-hour battle against someone who should be at least the top level, on clay at least over the years. So I suppose, but yeah, I think the one against Zverev was actually kind of counterintuitively maybe his best match of the season, which probably tells you that he brought everything he had for that Roland Garros campaign. It just wasn't meant to be, and obviously the draw didn't help. I
Yeah.
have to say, 2 of the last 3 events he played, the draw did not help.
By the way, also thinking the first match that he played this year was against Dominic Thiem, and they're both retiring now. So that's definitely unique that he might, his first match in his last season would be against Team, and his last match potentially would be Novak.
Yeah, Team and Nadal retiring within 1 month of each other, literally.
Yeah.
So maybe Wawrinka as well. We'll see. That also was a Grand Slam. Well, in fact, 2 Grand Slam finals between them. So
Yeah.
rank the big three, in my opinion, in terms of what?
In terms of what exactly?
Because it's going to be a different ranking, whether it's my sort of like enjoyment of their games or whether it's just literally their like legacy records. I already said that it's Djokovic up first. After that, I think Federer has a shot at kind of catching Nadal's achievement despite 2022, depending on what you look. More weeks at number one, more titles, more, I guess, success kind of like spread out over surfaces. So it's pretty close. I would maybe still put Nadal second. In terms of my enjoyment, Federer first. After that, it's a tie. Top spin heavy forehands like Nadal or Ruud are not good to watch, says Keen. If they're played with enough fire, like Arthur Fils, you like watching him, right? So, and that's probably spinnier than Casper, at least. I don't know about Rafa. In terms of my global perspective of them, so I guess the records, yeah, I think it's Djokovic clearly first, and then Nadal and Federer are pretty close. You can find arguments both ways, even with Rafa having 20-20. And the final word, what? Everything I have experienced has been a dream come true. I live with the absolute peace of mind of having given my best or having made an effort in every way. Exactly. And we hope that it's true. And that this is really how he feels. And he should feel like this because he's really given it his all. He tried his best. He tried to keep going, perhaps even further than the expiration date. But yeah, in that he absolutely gave it all.
Yeah, he can definitely go to sleep every night knowing that he squeezed every single drop of that lemon in a 23-year plus professional career. So, yeah, that's it. I think he also has the record for the most Masters 1000 wins right now. But that's probably going to get broken pretty soon.
Wins or titles?
Wins.
Okay.
Like just match wins. I think he has like 410. Djokovic has like 406. So Djokovic probably breaks that record, but
depending on how much he'll play. But yeah, if he's like 4 away, then he'll probably break it.
Yeah. I think for a while he also had the best win percentage overall. But I think this year that got squashed as well. So there are some records that just held up for a really, really long time, but that are like the overall win percentage stuff is just going to be crazy because of how little he lost on clay in general.
81 win streak on clay is like never getting broken.
Yeah.
It's pretty much impossible. Someone would have to be winning, especially with the top players right now, like not really going for the golden swing or not going for the post Wimbledon clay tournaments. Yeah, it's almost impossible. And that's a good one actually as well from Enserio. By the way, yes, Keen Arthur Fils does register higher in like RPMs on his forehand than Ruud. Will this retirement motivate Novak to keep going or deflate him?
I don't think it really changes him that much because he's lived a lot of tour life now without Rafa, basically since 2022 Wimbledon. I mean, he's gone on and done one more career slam since Rafa was really last competitive, which was 2022 Wimbledon when he beat Spritz in the quarterfinals. So I think he kind of knows the Sinner Alcaraz, how good they are, and kind of those are his two biggest rivals still right now.
Yeah, I was
be more
struggling
personally
to come
after
up
the
with.
Olympics. What else is there to taste and sort of it's more going to be individually about that, I think, as opposed to Rafa.
Yeah, I feel like overall maybe if he was thinking of like separating himself from Nadal in terms of the slam titles, then maybe. But yeah, I'm also kind of in the idea of that. Yes, Nadal was not really going to win any slams from here, so So yeah, I think it doesn't really change all that much whether he's playing or not. And by the way, that means I won't have to like eat my shoe or whatever it was, because recently someone I said in one of these videos that John clips that Djokovic and Nadal have as much of a chance of playing the French Open final in 2025 as like Shevchenko against De Jong or something like that. So, well, at least I won't have to eat my words. That's something. And also Matthew wants us to spare a thought for Casper Ruud. He idolizes Nadal and may need some time to come to terms with it. Perhaps a weekend concert. Okay, I should have read the last sentence and knew that it was a joke, and then I wouldn't bother with the comment. But thank you, Matthew. Yes, you clipped it, but unfortunately, you won't be able to like shove it in my face. And yeah, I mean, as a whole, I think as a community, obviously, we owe a lot to the big three, to how amazing they were on the court, to how they still are class acts off it. And obviously Nadal is very much part of that legacy. Today we pretty much spent more talking about his individual, I think, the way he will individually go down in history and in our minds. But of course, he's also very much a part of that era of tennis that might never repeat itself.
Yeah, and one more thing I think that's a compliment to Nadal is every time you hear Federer and Djokovic asked about who is their biggest rival, they will always say Nadal. They will always say Nadal number one for sure. So just kind of in the 2000s, it was Nadal who was chasing Federer, and then later it was and then it's just always going to be like that for them. It's so synonymous with him sort of being in between their ages. Obviously, very close in age to Djokovic, but still in terms of their trajectories.
Close in age to Djokovic, but he started out a bit earlier.
Yeah.
And Nadal pretty much has two biggest rivals, whereas they have one. Yeah, that's kind of true. Who do I think it was? I mean, it just depends on the era. 2005, 2011, let's say, or maybe 2010 actually. 2005, 2010, obviously it was Roger, and after that Novak. Whereas for them it would have felt like Nadal is the guy that they were coming up against the most. Also, of course, that kind of says it. That top two record that he has of like most weeks in there, right?
Oh, and also one more thing, hands down, greatest number two ever. Like just
At first he was up there with Federer, but mostly at number two, and then he was up there with Djokovic, but mostly at number two. Of course, eventually he also got a lot of weeks at number one himself.
Yeah, and he also had 5-year and number one finishes, so he's tied with Federer in that stat as well. Which
but there is someone who has more.
Yes, Djokovic has like 7, 8, but it's still there's some. I think getting it in 2019 was pretty big, as well, to do it at the age of 33.
Yeah, I didn't split 2017-19 either, John. I mean, by 2018, by late 2018, Djokovic was back in the picture. So I think it's much easier to do it in just two halves, kind of forgetting that later period. I mean, we've been going on for about an hour. What else do we have to say, Vansh?
Not really. I mean, I will just say, 8 slams after the age of 30 as well, 2 after the age of 35. So that stretch of like when we thought he was done, but then he wins 8 more is pretty ridiculous. I guess 2 US Opens and 1 Australian Open, and then 5 Roland Garros as well. Oh, and then also the top 10 record. Yeah, that's a good one by Matthew. I hadn't thought of that, when he spent almost, at one point I tweeted out this stat, I think because after the 2023 Australian Open, or like somewhere before the French Open in like last year, he dropped out of the top 10 for the first time, and I was like, wow, he's been a top 10 player consecutively longer than like Linda Fruvertover's entire life, and then to that point, which is like, it's wild to think. Like it's
March 2023, I think, is when he went out of the rankings, maybe after Indian Wells dropped or something like that.
So like from April 2005 to March 2020,
it was 912 weeks. There was a moment when he was like pretty close to dropping out, or like he dropped to 9 and everything around 2000. Before that tournament, I think he was at number 9, and also on a couple of other occasions. But that kind of also tells you how dominant he was when he was actually playing, because that 18-year patch included a lot of just periods of inactivity due to injuries. So will Rafa's son become a professional tennis player? It's kind of a thing that most pro players, or like at least the top level guys, they don't really want their children to become professional players. but I'm sure Rafa will give him that option, and see what this young guy will do. There are also the Rafa cousins playing, right?
Yeah.
The kids of Tony, or they're also playing. So, well, so far it doesn't seem like they will actually get anywhere super high, but at least the Nadal surname is going to be circulating around the tour. Nagal is also playing, so he's also maintaining Rafa's legacy in a way.
I wonder if you'll also see more players, be lefty only in tennis and then righty in everything else.
I don't think we have so far, right?
I don't think we have that yet. No.
But that's a good one, actually. That's also something that has to be mentioned.
Yeah.
That his playstyle was like so heavily based on the fact that he was playing with his left hand, but originally he was actually right-handed. Rafa's son will be better than Leo Borg, says Matthew. Big prediction of the day. We will remember that, screenshot it now, and in about 20 years, we're probably going to talk about that on Talking Tennis, when we're going to have 150,000 subscribers by then. Million. Sumit Nadal, yeah, sorta. Anyway, yeah, I guess we pretty much. I mean, we could sit here and talk about
I know
Nadal for like 10
we could
hours
do this for like another 5 hours, but no,
without any actual plan, or without any actual scheme for this. Yeah, we just basically came here unprepared 30 minutes after he announced this retirement, and hopefully you guys still enjoyed this impromptu emergency, as someone called it earlier, show. And well, Davis Cup finals, Six Kings Slam. Six Kings Slam, I am not going to watch, but the Davis Cup finals, if Nadal is playing, I suppose even if it's doubles, I will have to turn it on. So yes, see you in Malaga, Rafa. Not actually, physically, but see you on my TV when you're in Malaga.
Yep. And I guess in some ways, again, it's pretty good that it's at the end of this year, and because it would have also been awkward to come back to those clay events. You think, like in Madrid, he basically had the whole ceremony, and it was an official goodbye. And then, and in Rome, like I think in Rome and RG, they were supposed to do something on the court, but at that point, I think he was still like kind of thinking,
he
like,
started declining that, right?
Yeah.
Because he just didn't want to do it like every other week.
Right.
But yeah, it would have been weird if he kept going up until Madrid 2025 because of the retirement ceremony.
Yeah.
Well, the feeling before a Novak Rafa match cannot be recovered ever for Snehil. Me personally, I was a little bored of the rivalry the last few years, but I did have that feeling with Federer and Nadal for sure. And of course, 2019 was the last time they played. And well, 2024 Davis Cup finals. That will be the last time Rafa plays. Singles, doubles, we will have to wait and see.
Also glad that Rafa and Roger never played at the US Open. Yeah, that is.
Yeah,
that's obviously one of the wildest stats in tennis, right? With how close they came, like 6 times.
Yeah, like 6 times, I think. Yeah, when they were one round, and sometimes it was very like it wasn't the players you would expect that were stopping that, like Tommy Robredo, for example. Right? Of course, that year I think Rafa would have still won that match easily, but yeah, still.
Maybe Tommy one Robredo day down the road we'll get that in US Open Fan Week or some exhibition type setting, where they just play once
possibly
on Arthur Ashe for the crowd.
With their good relationship, I think that's actually kind of likely. I think Federer is playing some doubles in Shanghai today.
Maybe there'll be some other kind of big picture incentive behind it, like a foundation match or something for the academy or something.
South Africa with Bill Gates, like they did a few years back, and everything.
Yeah,
the Six Kings Slam.
We also had the half clay court, half grass court in 2007. That was also unique with the Roger Rafa exhibition then.
Yeah, that exhibition is definitely something that catches people just off guard when you tell them that what this match actually what how does it work?
And then obviously the two iconic Laver Cup moments in 2017 where Rafa just sort of jumps into Federer's hands after winning, and then obviously when they held hands in Federer's retirement. Yeah. I think some people literally would have those two pictures like on their walls, I think.
Yeah, I think I once won a picture of that first moment in a competition but I actually wanted the second place prize, which was like a hat or something like that, because I was like, where am I gonna? Am I just gonna put it on my wall? Nah, I'd rather want a hat, but no. But yeah, I've seen posters made out of this. Yes.
Yeah.
You see, the Laver Cup legacy is actually a thing.
Yeah, it is.
We've spent like 3 minutes of this 69, 70-minute show talking about Laver Cup.
Yeah.
I would love to play Vansh in an exhibition on the helipad atop Burj Khalifa. Yes, absolutely. Although I saw a photo of that exhibition just like 2 days ago or something like that, and I was thinking, would I not be like scared of maybe running for a
think
ball?
I would, honestly, like if I was trying to go back, let's say like hit a tweener or go back and near the
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of tweeners would be hit at our exhibition on top of the Burj Khalifa. Yes, that's the only shot that we would play. I think the elevation on that helipad was like rising a little bit, so I don't think you would be able to like run off it strictly, but I would still be a little scared. I think they probably just played like 2 minutes of footage and they left anyway. Yeah, Six King Slam. There's a buy for Rafa and Novak, so we don't know if we'll actually get that much, but we are at least guaranteed that Nadal will play twice, I think, there. Unless he withdraws, but well, for now we don't have that statement, obviously. So yeah, we can only work with what we have for now. This is the news of today. Rafael Nadal announced retirement. Now we can actually get back to watching tennis. Carlos Alcaraz, Thomas Mahac semis in Shanghai, in quarterfinals in Shanghai. So if anyone wants to catch a good match after this, definitely recommend that, especially as they're going close so far. But yeah, I think with Vansh we pretty much covered what we can for today in terms of.
And of course, we're going to hear tons from all the players right now. It's going to be the biggest thing for sure. They'll get asked about it. Basically,
one time here and also at the Davis Cup finals later.
Yeah, especially if Alcaraz wins, I can just totally imagine every single question after he wins being about the Rafa announcement ahead of, and obviously the eventual match against Sinner in the semis.
Yeah, it's possible for sure. They're gonna ask him if the Nadal 2009 and 2017 finals in Shanghai inspired him to make the final this year.
They're gonna ask him if Alcaraz would one day team up with Sinner and take on Roger and Rafa in an exhibition or something.
Perhaps Matthew is pretty pessimistic about Mahac holding for the 5th time. Let's run off and see if he actually will. In any case, yeah, I think we pretty much said it all we could. We pretty much said all we could on this impromptu show. Thank you to everyone who came in to also give us some of your memories and feelings about Rafa's career. Of course, this is not a topic that will die because, yeah, as I said, I think that here, obviously, it's already huge and there's going to be a lot of tweets and stuff on social media about it. But then also when he's actually playing at the Davis Cup finals, there's going to be a huge second wave of that. So it's definitely not the last time Rafael Nadal is mentioned in our content. And yeah, keep tuning into that, keep subscribing, and we'll see you guys some other time.
Yeah, definitely a pleasure to do this at 4:22 a.m. I don't regret it. Had a lot of fun, so. And
if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.